Aafia Siddiqui is a young Pakistani woman who was jailed for 86 years by a federal tribunal in New York in 2010 for attempting to kill US soldiers and FBI agents in Afghanistan. Sheikh Omar Abdel-Rahman has been in jail for much longer, actually, since 1996, convicted of plotting bombings and assassinations. He's the head of the spiritual head of Jamaat Islamiyah, an Egyptian movement. I think the significance is that this opens up an international jihadist dimension, which didn't seem to be there a couple of days ago. I remember our correspondent telling us of reports in Algeria that this commando was going to ask for the release of political prisoners in Algerian jails, or terrorists, as the Algerian government would call them. But there's clearly a much broader thinking. So despite the fact that Al-Qaeda has this local franchise, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, it still has elements clearly that are thinking globally, that are thinking of militants around the world who've been imprisoned. And I think it's a reminder of the jihad still being a global phenomenon, of Afghanistan still being a focal point of the jihad, and perhaps also a reminder that Egypt is actually the spiritual roots of Al-Qaeda. A man called Said Qutb inspired Osama bin Laden. Ayman Zawahiri, who took over after Osama bin Laden was killed, is himself Egyptian. So Egypt's still actually very important in this whole equation.
Now, this is a bit of a wake-up call in many ways for the United States. They've tried to stay out of it to a certain extent up till now. The likelihood that they're going to release them is pretty small, though, isn't it? It's
very impossible to imagine that they would release militants that their own courts have already convicted.
Okay. To broaden the scope of the conversation here, the crisis does continue in Algeria, but that hasn't stopped the reaction getting increasingly critical from foreign governments of the response from the Algerian forces.
It seems that Japan went the furthest, summoning their Algerian ambassador in Tokyo earlier today. The UK still saying that it wasn't told about the operation at the time when it started, and also Norway and the United States expressing concern about this communication or lack of it with the Algerian authorities.